Initiatives taken by the Government of India to enhance access to justice for women. So, what are the various initiatives and measures taken by the Indian government to enhance or to increase the accessibility to justice for women? Mission Shakti. Mission Shakti has two sub-schemes in it. What are these two sub-schemes? Sambal and Samarthya. Sambal and Samarthya are the two sub-schemes within Mission Shakti. One of the initiative by the Government of India to enhance justice for women. Sambal, the sub-scheme of Mission Shakti, focuses on women's safety and security, encompassing one-stop center, women helpline, Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao and Nari Adalats. So, Sambal, a sub-scheme of Mission Shakti, focuses on women's safety and ensuring security. It comprises of one-stop centers, women helpline, Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao and Nari Adalats. Free legal aid to women under Legal Services Authorities Act of 1987. So, free legal aid is provided to women under Legal Services Authorities Act of 1987. Pink Booth Initiative by the Delhi Police to boost security for the city's women and girls and also to offer guidance to them related to their security and safety. So, Pink Booth is an initiative by the Delhi Police under the Government of India. The World Meteorological Organization has released State of Climate Services Report, State of Climate Services Report of 2023. This State of Climate Services Report 2023 is released by the World Meteorological Organization. This year, the annual report focuses on the health. Some of the key highlights of this State of Climate Services Report of 2023 by the World Meteorological Organization includes the impact of climate change. It highlights the impact of climate change. The climate change may reverse the decades of progress that was achieved towards the better health, particularly the most vulnerable communities. So, all the progress that was achieved towards realizing the betterment of the health of vulnerable communities will be reversed due to the impact of the climate change is highlighted by the report. Further, the financing gap for air pollution. Financing gap for air pollution. Air pollution is the fourth biggest killer by health risk factors, yet only 2% of the international climate finance commitments are going towards this tackling the air pollution. It highlights the financing gap for the air pollution. It also highlights that air pollution is the fourth biggest killer by health risk factors, and it also highlights that only 2% of the international climate finance commitments are directed towards tackling this air pollution. Further, it also highlights the underutilization of climate information. Climate information enhances the public health prevention strategies and also preparedness to save lives of the human beings. It also highlights that 74% of the national meteorological and hydrological services provide climate data to health actors, but utilization of these data remains very limited. 74% of the national meteorological and hydrological services provide climate data to health actors, but the utilization of this data remains very limited and dissatisfactory. Research and knowledge gaps are also highlighted by the report. Lack of access to sufficient local meteorological observations and insufficient human and institutional capacities are also highlighted by the report. The status of climate services report by the World Meteorological Organization. What are the recommendations made in the report? There is an urgent need for tailored climate information and services to support the health sector. The report has recommended for coming up with a tailored climate information and services to support the health sector. This can be achieved through the following ways. It also has outlined the various ways using which this can be achieved. Developing in-country capacities to improve local knowledge. Policy mandates for health and meteorological actors to collaborate among themselves. Raising awareness about the importance of climate information. Some background information about the World Meteorological Organization. It is an intergovernmental organization and a specialized agency of the United Nations. It is established in the year 1950 and traces its origins to International Meteorological Organization or IMO. The 1873 Vienna International Meteorological Congress has led to the formation of IMO and the previous version of the World Meteorological Organization. What are the objectives of World Meteorological Organization? It is dedicated to international cooperation and also coordination on state and the behavior of Earth's atmosphere and its interaction with land, oceans and weather and climate, and it produces and resulting of distribution of water resources. 193 member countries are part of this organization. Now, what are the various reports that are released by this organization of World Meteorological Organization? State of the global climate and air quality and climate bulletin. State of the global climate and air quality and climate bulletin are the reports, the other two reports released by the World Meteorological Organization apart from State of the Climate Services report. Center extends Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Anna Yojana for another 5 years till 2028. Now, what is this Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Anna Yojana? Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Anna Yojana. Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Anna Yojana was launched this year to provide free of cost food grains for a year under National Food Security Act of 2013. So, under the provisions of the National Food Security Act of 2013, the Government of India has launched Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Anna Yojana to provide free of cost food grains to the needy people for a year in this year. It should also be noted that this initiative is different from the Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Anna Yojana that was launched in 2020 as a pandemic relief measure. Some important information about the Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Anna Yojana. It was launched under the Section 3 of the National Food Security Act of 2013. It aims at providing rice, wheat and coarse grains free of cost to families belonging to Antyodaya Anna Yojana AAY and priority households categories. So, to all those families who belong to Antyodaya Anna Yojana and priority households categories, to all those families, this initiative, this Yojana aims at providing free of cost food grains like rice, wheat and coarse grains. Priority households are to be identified by the state governments and union territory administrations as per the criteria evolved by them. So, the responsibility of identifying the beneficiaries of priority household categories lies with the state governments and union territories, and they themselves have to define the criteria for their selection. However, the Antyodaya Anna Yojana families are to be identified and selected by the states and union territories as per the criteria prescribed by the central or the union government. The responsibility of identifying the beneficiaries of Antyodaya Anna Yojana also lies with the states and union territory administrations, but as per the criteria prescribed by the central government. It subsumed two subsidy schemes of the Department of Food and Public Distribution. What are these two sub-schemes that are subsumed in this Garib Kalyan Anna Yojana? Food subsidy to Food Corporation of India, one such sub-scheme, and food subsidy for decentralized procurement or DCP. These two sub-schemes are subsumed into the Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Anna Yojana initiative. The Ministry of Consumer Affairs, Food and Public Distribution is the nodal agency responsible for the implementation of this Yojana. What are the benefits? Free of cost food grains to be distributed to around 80 crore population, ensuring their nutrition safety and security. What are the challenges that are posed to this implementation of the initiative or yojana? High cost of subsidies, a burden on the Indian economy. Subsidies is a burden. Issues with the identification and selection of the beneficiaries, and also the issue of subsidy going against the commitments of World Trade Organization. These are some of the challenges that are facing the implementation of the Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Anna Yojana, which was extended by Honorable Prime Minister for another 5 years till 2028. Loss and Damage Transitional Committee has reached an agreement for the design and development of a new Loss and Damage Fund or LDF. Loss and damage, what does this loss and damage refer to? It refers to negative consequences that may arise from the unavoidable risks of climate change, like rising sea levels and prolonged heat waves. Now, what is the purpose of developing a loss and damage fund? The purpose is to assist developing countries which are vulnerable to adverse effects of climate change, so as to encourage them and also to motivate them to respond to economic and also non-economic loss and associated damages. It is designed on the principle of common but differentiated responsibilities, CDRs. At the Sharm el-Sheikh Climate Conference in 2022, countries have decided to set up a dedicated fund for loss and damage, and a transitional committee was also established for designing the fund. The transitional committee is a 24-member team of negotiators from developed and also developing countries. So, this loss and damage fund transitional committee comprises of 24 members, team of negotiators derived from developing and also developed countries. So, this loss and damage transitional committee and this loss and damage fund was initially conceived in the Sharm el-Sheikh Climate Conference or COP27 that was concluded in the year 2022. There were differences between the member countries in terms of the location of the loss and damage fund and also the sources of the fund. In terms of the location for the loss and damage fund and also for the sources for the funding, there were differences between the member countries. The blueprint of the loss and damage fund will formally be adopted at the Conference of Parties to the UN Climate Summit. The COP number 28 to the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change is scheduled to be convened in Abu Dhabi, UAE in this year. So, the blueprint for the loss and damage fund is decided to be formally adopted at the COP28 UN Climate Summit scheduled for this year. The design of the LDF. What is the design of the LDF? Loss and damage fund will be administered by the World Bank as a World Bank hosted financial intermediary fund for an interim period of 4 years only. Loss and damage fund will be administered by the World Bank as a World Bank hosted financial intermediary fund for a period of 4 years only. Developing countries gave up their demand for establishing an LDF as a standalone fund. Developed countries were urged to contribute towards the fund, while the developing countries were encouraged to contribute towards the funding of the LDF. It is urgent for the developing countries to contribute towards this fund, whereas the developing countries are encouraged to contribute towards the LDF, loss and damage fund. Also in news was environmental DNA or eDNA. Researchers at the Laboratory for the Conservation of Endangered Species or LACONS have developed a new method or a mechanism for assessing the total biodiversity through environmental DNA. What is this eDNA? Laboratory for the Conservation of Endangered Species, or LACONS, is a Council for Scientific and Industrial Research and Center for Cellular and Molecular Biology laboratory. It is a joint initiative laboratory of CSIR and CCMB, LACONS. Researchers can assess the total biodiversity by sequencing the eDNA of samples such as water, soil or air. Just by sequencing the eDNA samples of soil, water and air, the researchers can assess the total biodiversity of the ecology or the environment. This method is non-destructive and at the same time non-invasive biological monitoring method. Environmental DNA or eDNA is the DNA that is shed by all the organisms into their surroundings through natural processes during their lifetime or after their death. Maternity leaves was also in news. Why? Because the Ministry of Defence has approved the extension of the rules for the maternity, child care and child adoption leaves for the women soldiers in the Indian Armed Forces. Now, women in all the ranks of armed forces will be granted or provided maternity leave on par with their civilian counterparts or civilian women employees. Maternity leave is governed by the Maternity Benefit Act of 1961, which was amended in 2017. This Maternity Benefit Act of 2017 provides or allows working women to take paid maternity leave for 26 weeks for the first two children. So, paid maternity leave for 26 weeks is provided for working women according to the provisions or rules of the Maternity Benefit Act of 1961 amended in 2017. And this facility or this benefit is available for the first two children only. Enabling communications on real-time environment or ENCORE. Enabling communications on real-time environment or ENCORE was also in news. Why? Because the Election Commission of India has designed an in-house software for complete candidate and election management through ENCORE. Enabling communication on real-time environment or ENCORE is designed in-house as a software for complete candidate and election management information by Election Commission of India. This software is an end-to-end application for the returning officers to digitize their votes polled, tabulate the round-wise data and also then take out the various statutory reports of the counting. Enabling communication on real-time environment or ENCORE is an initiative of the Election Commission of India. Another application called as the ENCORE Scrutiny application allows the returning officers to scrutinize the nominations filed by the candidates through online modes. ENCORE Scrutiny application is another application developed by the ECI that can allows or facilitates returning officers to scrutinize the nominations filed by the candidates through online modes. Through the ENCORE nodal app, various departments like fire, education, police, environment, etc. can give no objection certificates for holding of public rallies, road shows, etc. to various political parties and their candidates. ENCORE nodal app, ENCORE Scrutiny application and ENCORE app mobile application software are the various applications and softwares designed and developed by the Election Commission of India. Jal Jeevan Mission or JJM was also in news. The mission has enhanced tap water connection in rural areas from 16% in 2019 to a tremendous 70% in 2023. The tap water connections in rural areas has increased from 16% in 2019 to reaching 70% levels in November 2023 according to the report of the Jal Jeevan Mission. Now, what is this Jal Jeevan Mission? It is envisioned to provide safe and adequate drinking water through functional household tap connections FHTCs by 2024 to all the households in rural India only. Jal Jeevan Mission aims at providing safe and adequate drinking water facility through functional household tap connections by 2024 to all the households in rural areas only. Jal Jeevan Mission. The Ministry of Jal Shakti is the nodal agency for the implementation of Jal Jeevan Mission, which was launched in 2019 as a centrally sponsored scheme. Jal Jeevan Mission Urban. The Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs is the nodal agency for the implementation of Jal Jeevan Mission Urban. It aims at providing functional taps in all the 4378 statutory towns announced in the Union Budget 21-22. Jal Jeevan Mission Rural was launched in 2019. Ministry of Jal Shakti is the nodal agency for implementation of the Jal Jeevan Mission Rural, whereas the Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs is the nodal agency for the implementation of Jal Jeevan Mission Urban, which was launched in the Union Budget 21-22 to provide functional tap connections in all of the 4378 statutory towns in India. So, my dear friends, so far we have covered all the current events and happenings that have taken place from 31st of October till 6th of November 2023.